and welcome back to the Chargers Check-In. My name is Cecilia, here to preview the Thursday night matchup, the Vikings coming to Los Angeles to face the Chargers in front of a national audience. This is very exciting. I think this is a really important game for the Chargers, and the vibes are not good in Minnesota. We'll get to that, but they are still a fiercely competitive team. There's a lot that concerns me, but also I think a lot of opportunities for the Chargers to get right at different position groups, especially on the defensive side. But to start this out, let's take a look at the injury report on both sides, starting with the Vikings. CJ Ham didn't practice, Brian O'Neill didn't practice. Not too big of a deal. Ryan Kelly has been out, so it will be a backup center. I'm not sure who it's going to be, but I think that is going to end up being a weakness that you might want to see the Chargers exploit. We will get into that. On the Chargers side, there is big news. Joe Alt himself said that he would be playing, at least at the start. At practice, he had a huge thing taped around his ankle, but if he can be out there, that would be absolutely huge and frankly changes my win prediction. Jamari Sawyer should be back. I know he is not a good player. We have to take what we can get on the offensive line. Not sure about Elijah Molden, not sure about Troy Dye. Hopefully at least one of them can be back, but it's not looking great. Hassan Haskins is likely to be out. That's not too big of a deal. It's not great for special teams, not great for short yardage run situations, because Kamani Vidal he's not built to run through the middle. I would be surprised if they didn't elevate a running back from the practice squad. That's something to look out for. Also, injuries aside, Caleb Murphy was claimed by the Patriots, and while I don't think that's that big of a deal, it's not like he has made a big impact this season. He did manage to take special teams off of Thule's plate. He was playing just well enough for that, and I think that's a big deal. Anything you can do to get your best players more rested on the defensive side is a really big deal. A lot of position groups sort of pace themselves throughout football games. Edge rushers are not one of them. Edge rushers are going as hard as they can every single snap. So I don't like that Thule has to now play special teams. I don't understand how there is a roster spot for Bud Dupree, but not Caleb Murphy. This is a lesson, and you can't just cut good players and expect them to always make it back to your practice squad, and Joe Ortiz knows that. It's frustrating that Harbaugh seems really attached to Bud Dupree. I don't see the value of that when you have Khalil Mack in that position group already, so is what it is. I don't think that'll be a difference between winning and losing, but we will see. On to the state of the Vikings. They're 3-3. They're in a tough division. The NFC North is one of the most competitive. According to Adam Schefter, Carson Wentz will be the starting quarterback. The Vikings fan base is seriously fed up with the Carson Wentz experience. I don't entirely blame them. I think as far as backup quarterbacks go, it definitely gets worse. He struggled a lot against the Eagles, threw a couple interceptions, and his throwing mechanics are really weird. A lot of the time he's a little bit off balance. His arm doesn't quite make it parallel with his shoulder. He doesn't get into that good slot that you want to be in. He tends to throw a little bit lower. Think like Phillip Rivers' throwing motion, except instead of starting low and going up, which was the only reason that Phillip Rivers' throwing mechanics worked. Instead, he gets back to the starting position where he should be and then comes through too low. And I think that's affecting his accuracy a lot. He's had a lot of throws where it just kind of goes straight into the ground. A lot of his interceptions have been because of bad throws. And, he also has made some bad decision making. And while the rest of his play isn't horrible, when you're bad at some of the most important things, fans are going to notice. JJ McCarthy has had a really slow start to his career. He was taken last year in the first round, immediately, had the ankle injury and just hasn't really been able to come back. He played a bit in the preseason, got hurt again. I think it's been really hard for Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings head coach, to find some consistency on offense. They heavily favor the passing game, almost as much as the Chargers. 60% of the time, they are passing. They love the play action, and I think that they are going to use it a lot this week. The play action has been very effective against the Chargers because the Chargers are so frequently beat by the run game that they are hyper vigilant about it. They don't want to get beat. And so they bite on these play actions before the play even really happens. They don't really have that kind of discipline. So that's something to look out for. Although Carson Wentz does a terrible job of selling the play. Like he He basically he sticks his arm out and brings it right back. He's not doing much for that. Justin Jefferson has been fantastic. He's had 2 games with over 100 yards. He's so dangerous with that deep ball. I've wanted the Chargers to play more man-to-man. I think they have the guys for it, but Justin Jefferson might just be the exception to that. And a lot of defenses play zone against the Vikings, and he's really good at reading it. He's fast, he's athletic, he can read the defense, he can find the holes. That's tough to deal with, and the fact that he can do that with Carson Wentz at quarterback, that's pretty concerning and pretty impressive. Their run game, somewhat average, not super impressed with their running backs, but with the Chargers' weaknesses on defense, you shouldn't be shocked if, somebody tries to go for 100 yards, because the Chargers have struggled so much with the run game, especially on the outside, but even up the middle against the Colts, up the middle didn't look good. Granted, the Colts have a good offensive line to set that up. Vikings, not a great offensive line, certainly with the center position being down. I think that makes a big difference for them. They have allowed a lot of sacks this year. Carson Wentz isn't the best at escaping sacks. He just doesn't have the awareness. When he sees it coming, I think he does a decent job, but so many times someone just comes around the backside and, grabs his legs before he's able to do anything about it. But honestly, the offense doesn't worry me. The Chargers' defense worries me, but the Vikings' offense doesn't worry me. What worries me is the Vikings' defense. Brian Flores is a very, very good defensive coordinator. Over the course of his career, has really outperformed his roster at every stage. And, I know that the Vikings aren't doing amazing this year. I don't know that I can blame the defense for it. Now, let's get into it. The Vikings, they are known for blitzing at a remarkably high rate, about 36% of the time. Flores is just a very, very aggressive coach. That's how he wants to play. 43% pressure rate. That's going to test the Chargers offense, right? With their beat up offensive line. Joe Alt is back. Zion had a bad game last game. Bradley Boseman had a bad game last game and every other game of his career. That worries me, and the Chargers are going to have to address that. They run a zone defense vast majority of the time, just like the Chargers. I think the defense really shines in the red zone. They do a good job of limiting touchdowns and forcing field goals. 5th overall in success rate. That's a tough defense, and they're not as good at getting sacks, at getting turnovers as they were last year. And so you would expect this to be a big turnover game. We will see. But the defense, to me at least, is why they are 500 this year. This is a tough defense to go against. Again, I know they haven't been amazing this year, but they are absolutely keeping this offense going. And, we've seen what that's like. With the Chargers last year, it was like the defense are keeping the offense in every single game. And honestly, I think the way that you beat that is by keeping your defense off the field, slow, methodical drives, and that worries me because Chargers don't have Amarian Hampton. So how do the Chargers win? I think the first thing is on the offensive side, they need to punish the blitz. When you blitz that much, there's a reason that most teams don't. You leave a lot of vulnerabilities. A lot of the time that means leaving 2 receivers in man-to-man coverage with a single high safety. A lot of the time that means that you're vulnerable to a quick throw to the flats, or you're vulnerable to screens, you're vulnerable to inside runs. So I think the Chargers need to run right at it. I know that, Hassan Haskins might not be out there, but if they can run toward Joe Alt's side, they have a better shot. Put Tucker Fisk on whoever the right tackle is going to be. I think a lot of those quick throws to the flats, QJ and Keenan on some crossing routes up the middle, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities there. Especially, we have some fast wide receivers. Put Ladd out there. He can make a few guys miss and turn that into a 20-yard play. I think that's something that is repeatable, and I think it opens up the playbook a bit. And Greg Roman is going to be tested this week. He has to open up the playbook a bit because frankly, Brian Flores is the better coordinator. Brian Flores wins more often than not throughout the course of his career against Greg Roman, and we're going to have to see something different. Justin Herbert has kept them in a lot of these games, but I think this is going to be a really interesting scheme matchup. What does Greg Roman have planned? So keep an eye on that opening drive. What is he scripting? What does he think is going to work best? And then how does he adjust to the blitz? How does he adjust to simulated pressures? The kinds of things that if he can't adjust to that, well, the defense probably isn't going to keep us in the postseason contention. You know, it has to be the offense, and I think this is a really good week to test that. We saw the Vikings get burned against the Steelers when you see Aaron Rodgers look over to his left, see a receiver lined up against a corner, no one else in the area. Of course he's going to throw it to that guy. Of course, why wouldn't he? A one-on-one matchup? Absolutely, you know, because Rodgers has that kind of accuracy, but so does Justin Herbert, you know, and so I think this is a big opportunity for that. Punish the blitz early and force them to play out of their game later, you know, especially in the fourth quarter when it comes down to it. I think this is going to be a really close game. I also think since Kamani Vidal isn't great at those inside runs, you know, I wouldn't be mad at getting Justin Herbert the ball a few times, maybe a couple times to the inside and a couple times to the outside. He's a bigger, stronger running back than Kamani Vidal, and I think mixing it up like that is another way to punish the blitz. A lot of the time, if you just run right at the guy blitzing, you can make that first guy miss because he's coming downhill so hard. And then you're in open field. Again, we're at the time of the year where we are putting stuff on tape. What do we want defenses in December to have to worry about? What do we want them to be prepared for? I want them to put resources toward Herbert running the ball so that we are more open downfield. And against any team, even if they don't blitz every play, they need to protect Herbert, put a tight end on the line, especially on the right side, but occasionally on the left side too. I mean, Joe Alt is coming back from an ankle injury, you know, and he can't have a perfect game every game. I know he's very determined. I know he was upset he didn't get to play last game, upset he didn't get to go back in the game where he got hurt. You know, Herbert has to be protected. He's getting hit at an unprecedented rate, and we are not going to keep being lucky that he isn't getting hurt, right? Because while the Chargers have had terrible injury luck, when it comes to Justin Herbert, we've been really lucky. 60-something hits and he hasn't been hurt. That's really fortunate. A lot of quarterbacks have gone down with significantly fewer hits than that. I also want to note the wide receivers need to catch the ball. The Chargers have the second most drop passes with 16 on the year. A lot of them came from Ladd. Some came from QJ last week. That's not going to be good enough. I know Gadsden has dropped a few. He seems a lot more comfortable out there. The receivers need to perform at Herbert's level, and Herbert is going to throw you a dart. He's going to hit you in the hands. He's going to hit you in the chest, and he throws hard. They need to be able to keep up with that. But moving over to the defensive side, this defense cannot afford to bite on the play action. You know, this is not a team with a good enough running situation that they need to sell out to stop the run. What they need to do is see the play happening. That's something, you know, Derwin James talked a bit about. It's just not seeing it. That they absolutely have to get right. If the defense can't get right against this Vikings offense, I think that's kind of it. Because more reinforcements aren't coming. You know, we'll see more from Denzel Perryman this week. We'll see a lot more from Khalil Mack this week, but this is it. Deion Henley, Tuli Tuipulotu, and Derwin James, they need to not bite on the play action, and they need to read these runs correctly, especially runs to the outside. I think with the Vikings offensive line struggles, they're absolutely counting on the play action to give Carson Wentz more time. He's not someone who goes through his progressions super quickly. Getting after him, I think, is really effective, but you can't do that if you bite on the play action every time. So we need to see good discipline from the defensive players. And they need to get after the quarterback. And that's just not on the edge. That's also the interior. I want to see Jamari Caldwell go after this backup center. I want to see Tier Tart target this backup center. And I want to see the pocket collapse around Carson Wentz. He's done a pretty good job of when he escapes the pocket, you know, turning it into a 10-yard run, 12-yard run. You know, a lot of the time he gets just enough for a first down, and that can blow up a drive on the defensive side, because it's like, well, your coverage was good, you got after the quarterback, you did everything right, but then there was a running lane. And so if they can collapse the pocket around him from the interior, they can prevent some of those escapes from Carson Wentz. And I think this backup center is a real opportunity. I want to see some noise from Odafe Oweh. I want to see some noise from Jamari Caldwell, Tier Tart. I want to see what we can do against a weaker offensive line, because if the Chargers can't do well against this offense where they don't have a great quarterback, offensive line isn't great, you know, their main assets are receivers, I just don't see them doing well down the stretch. I don't think the offense is good enough to outpace how the defense has been doing, and I think this is a really good opportunity for the defense to get right. They can get right on the run game, they can get right at getting at the quarterback. This Vikings team, they throw a few interceptions, and they always have turnover-worthy plays. There are always opportunities. And so some things to watch for. Interior defensive line, they could absolutely have a big day against this backup center. I also am curious, are we going to see Oronde Gadsden have a bigger role moving forward? I think a good pass-catching tight end is really crucial for a Greg Roman offense, and we finally have it, right? We have finally figured that out. I want to see what that looks like, especially now with a little bit more protection on the left side. And going forward, we should get Trey Pipkins back. That should mean more protection on the right side. That should mean playbook opening up a little bit. After that, getting Amarian Hampton back. I'm confident in this offense, a couple months from now, but can the defense get right now, and can Oronde Gadsden keep his streak going? So that's what I'm going to be looking for against the Vikings. I think this is going to be a tough game. My nervous score prediction, only because Joe Alt is back, I'm going to put 24-20 with the Chargers winning very narrowly. This game makes me nervous because this is just an emotional statement, but it feels like if the Chargers don't win this game, playoff hopes are, I'm not going to say they're dead, but I think it'll kind of go like last year, where you get there, you have one game, and you look really bad, and Herbert takes an absolute beating. And, I want to see the Chargers avoid that. I want them to be able to step up to the next level. They have a lot of the guys to do it, but can the defense turn around? I don't know. Jesse Minner, what do you got for us? Thank you so much for watching. This has been the Chargers check-in. I will check back in to react to the Vikings game, hopefully with a Chargers win. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you like what you've seen today, and I will see you guys next time. Bolt up.